This is Kieran, 18 handicap golfer who I had the pleasure of working with over 6 months, getting his handicap down as low as possible. We worked on driver, irons, wedges, short game to try and get the best scoring ability out of him. We've got the results, we've got the journey and the drills that we worked on to try and help achieve this goal. You get to see his handicap now as well as his scoring ability 6 months later. I hope you guys enjoy this one. So let's start from the very beginning. 6 months ago, me and Kieran went and played 9 holes, and I love going out on the golf course with my clients. Not necessarily to teach them, but more a case of seeing where their game is. Our golf game can be so different from the driving range as it can be on the golf course, whether it's alignment or how you play it, aggressive, course management, mentality. There's a list of things, and normally when I go out on the course with a client and we're looking over a 3 to 6 month period, I want to find weaknesses, specifically 3 to 5 big weaknesses that we want to eradicate over that time period. There's so many things in our golf game that we can change, and sometimes we try and fix all of them, whereas let's look at the important ones. Let's look at the ball flight, and then let's look at the impact. From there we can then build up the swing, the backswing, the way it comes down, your swing path, you name it, because there's many ways to play this game and I love making it simple. I should also mention quickly, if you're interested in a similar program, I have a few spaces left available for this year, as a few of my clients have already taken quite a lot of the allocated spaces. And if you are interested in the kind of program that I've built for Kieran here, message me through my website or any social media channel. Number 1 on the priority was Kieran's low ball flight. This could be a combination of 2 things: launch angle, which the ball obviously comes off the face, and spin rate. They're the big 2 main factors when it comes to getting the ball up in the air. And that's one of the things that I noted, not only for carry distance, but also control around the greens, especially when it gets into the summer months and we need the ball to stop quickly. Number 2, topping of the driver. Kieran expressed this was a bit of a challenge at the moment, where he was able to obviously catch one decent drive like he did straight off the first, 230, 240 yards straight down the middle, but occasionally he did top the driver, and when that does happen you lose confidence, and again those top drivers are going to punish you more than any of the good shots that swing can obviously produce. This is quite similar to why his ball flight is relatively low as well at the start of the 6 months, and again we're going to work on those simultaneously. Wedge play is a big one for a lot of mid handicappers and high handicappers. So many of us start and focus on driver and irons, rightly so, as we're worried about them. We don't want to top them off the first tee. But when it comes to a decent wedge game, knowing your yardages from 40 yards, 50 yards, 60 yards, 70 yards is so pivotal to having a good score, not only on the days where you're hitting your tee shots well, but scrambling on the bad days. And it can be made very simple, which we'll discuss later in this video. Number 4, stock shot. So many golf courses, especially in the UK or around the world, par 4s are only 320, 340 yards, meaning a 200-yard shot, stock shot, whether it's your hybrid, long iron. Potentially the driver gets you down the middle of the fairway 8 times out of 10, and Kieran didn't have a stock shot. He loved the driver, he loved his mid irons, but fairway, hybrid, rightly so with the low ball flight he has at the moment, couldn't hit a fairway, couldn't hit a rescue, and this is something that we definitely had to develop. And then lastly, that club getting stuck behind Kieran. I'm not one for really working on the backswing, especially when I start with clients, as it impacts everything. If you can recreate impact consistently out the middle, club face at target, swing path pretty neutral, I don't care what your backswing looks like. However, Kieran's backswing did get him trapped quite a bit, specifically as he's trying to bring that club on the inside to produce a draw. And again, it's something that's just going to happen over time as we work on the other 4 things. If we can get that club down into the ground better, it does mean that it'll be able to get out the rough better, ultimately helping our scoring over the long term. So before we show the results and obviously how well Kieran's playing to this present day, let's talk about the 5 things and how we got around them, how we improved them. Number 1, low ball flight, low launch. We were launching the ball incredibly low, and we had to hit the ball straight. We can see how close the club face is for Kieran on the way back. Very much a bowed wrist, also quite a strong grip, meaning that he almost had to play punch shots everywhere. If he released the club at all, it's going even more left and even more low, and majority of the time you end up with this kind of weak block to the right hand side. We had to get the club face more open on the way back, and we had to teach Kieran to release the club a bit more naturally. Everything landing was very much off the back foot 6 months ago, whereas now we're looking for a very much complete follow through, and that also means that you can get down into the ground, releasing the club and the ball ending straight, and that's pivotal. All these changes have to mean the club face is at the target, and also the swing path is relatively neutral. Good drill for this that I showed Kieran is putting the ball inside the left foot, and it almost forced him to go after it, forced to get that weight ahead of himself, trying to hit down on the ball. I'm not saying take this to the golf course, but if you want to have the ability to move the low point in your swing, so it's not on the back foot, but more towards the front foot, put the obstacle even further forward. Put that ball off the front foot and get used to hitting down on the ground further in front of you. Then when you put the ball back in its normal position, you might find that you're getting a bit more of a downward strike on the ball. Number 2, topping the driver. And this is one of the reasons why Kieran's swing was the way it was, is that actually he found he got loads of distance with his driver with this de-lofted hitting up on the ball technique, which is great in part because again it's going to give you maximum distance, but then at the same time it leaves little room for error. This is why he found it struggled with the fairway woods and the rescues, especially off the ground, because with the driver you can tee up, you haven't got to contend with the ground at all. So we had to implement this follow through, getting our weight ahead of the golf ball, finding the middle of the face, and in the short term we lost a bit of distance, mainly because we're not hitting those kind of low spin knuckleballs down the fairway, but because of the connection and actually the more increased club head speed as we created more room at the top of the swing, he was able to find more distance, more control, and then also stability through the follow through, so that even on bad shots, heel, toe strikes, there was still enough backspin off those shots that we did find the fairway. There's the whole point of getting more distance to the driver on the good shots, but we also want a decent amount of distance on the bad shots as well. Number 3, wedge play. I teach this pretty much to everyone after working with them for quite a while, and it's having 3 swings with 3 wedges, a 7:30 swing, a 9 o'clock swing, a 10:30 swing. It really doesn't matter what yardages those swings produce, but when you have the same 3 swings with 3 different wedges or even 4 different wedges, you start to build a bit of a table up in your golf game. One that goes 20 yards, one that goes 30, one that goes 35, one that goes 42, and these yardages will change over time, but it also teaches you how far the ball can go with such little effort. When it comes to wedge play, we want a relatively shallow angle attack into the ground, but hands ahead of the ball. We want to compress that ball at the same time to give you some kind of strike. The reason that this is great is it actually teaches you what your impact should be like with your irons, and once working on the wedges and trying to get that strike right, it kind of clicked with Kieran of how to strike the irons properly, keeping the hand slightly ahead of the ball, but now we're able to keep more launch. We got much better strike, we got a much higher launch, and we ultimately got more carry distance throughout the bag. Stock shot time, rescue and fairway wood. Ultimately working on the 3 things beforehand, getting that club face a bit more open on the way back and allowing a bit more of a natural release meant the hybrids and the fairway came into play. They had enough of a launch angle at impact that the ball got up in the air, and because they produce more backspin than the driver, on the bad shots they just don't go wayward. That spin axis is a lot more favourable in terms of off-centre strikes or that club face open or close, meaning Kieran was hitting his 5 wood comfortably 200, 210 yards at times, and that's more than enough trying to get it down the middle of the fairway. And it's one of the big reasons why Kieran's handicap was able to drop so quickly over the course of the 6 months. And then lastly, backswing. So many golfers think that their whole game is bad, but actually I spend a good portion of time telling them what they're doing well. For example, Kieran's clubhead speed was pretty decent. His swing path was very neutral, hence why he had no curvature on the ball even 6 months ago. But we wanted more height, we wanted more consistency, and we wanted him to be able to hit down on the ball better so he could manage himself in the rough. The backswing got more upright as we worked on the 4 previous elements. We did spend one session trying to create more width in the backswing, trying to feel like he's almost pushing that club more away from himself, but he did the majority of the work himself purely through the basis of trial and error. Knowing that he wants to hit the ball straighter, he found himself that he could get the club a bit steeper because that led the ball to go higher and it led it to go straighter. Too many of us don't do the aesthetic things. Don't tick the boxes in the backswing or the follow through or the release, because that won't result in a straight shot. If you change elements in your swing, that will then reward you to hitting a straight shot, i.e. getting the club a bit steeper and getting it a bit more higher in your backswing. Then it's easier to implement. And that's one of the reasons why I leave backswing to the end, because if you spend too much time on your backswing at the start and it just leads to worse results, then ultimately no one's going to stick with it.
That'll do nicely, mate. What's the heart rate at?
1 million.
The first time of me seeing Kieran out on the golf course for 6 months. Let's give you the lowdown. Let's see what score we shot, as well as give you an idea of where his handicap now is 6 months later. I'd love to hear in the comments down below what you think his handicap now is. Nervous front nine. Understandably, he knew this was obviously going up on the channel. Few people are going to watch it, which makes it so much worse when you hit a bad shot. I've been there in a tournament situation. You hit a bad shot, all of a sudden you start thinking about a score, how you're going to lose it. You make a double or a silly triple here, there, shot out of bounds, and it makes it that much worse. That's why on the range, no results. Of course, we hit loads of good golf shots, whereas on the golf course, if you can't have that mental routine to steady the ship, think about it systematically, go through your pre-shot routine, trying to make sure that you're not making silly mistakes that otherwise you wouldn't. And Kieran did a great job of resetting himself. We had, sadly, a double bogey on the one there before. We had a 3-putt here. That was another double bogey. Then all of a sudden, this hole up the hill was a bit of a nightmare. In the trees, out the trees. So we kind of racked up 8 shots, even though he only shot 2 over through the first 3 holes. Those bad shots seem that much worse. I could see it, because all of a sudden he's thinking this is going to go out. People are going to watch it. You're compounding errors. And that's what makes golf such a difficult game. Being able to stay in that present moment and hitting good shots, because I know the guy can hit a great golf ball, as the handicap and scores that he's been posting has been incredible. But this is a great lesson for him, because for the back nine, the guy turned it on. We hit the reset switch, we got through our pre-shot routine, we just took shot by shot, and all the stuff that we've been working on, like this stock shot here, for example, with the fairway wood, just came into play. We weren't getting the driver out until we had the swing back in its place. Wedge shot again here from 100 yards, straight down the flag, giving himself a good birdie chance, even though we did leave it a tiny bit short. And as you get better, especially when you come down to like single figures, 6, 7, 8, there's no difference in terms of good shots between an 8 handicapper and a 15 handicapper in reality, but there's less bad shots and you're getting more up and downs, you're holding more putts, not necessarily losing as many tee shots right, left, and again, even with the driver there on this par 5, wasn't the best strike, but it's down the middle. And that's what we wanted all the way from the start. I knew you could hit a decent drive when I met him, but how do we get the other clubs working into the bag? How do we limit the bad mistakes so they're not as bad, and then capitalise on the good shots? Good par here on the par 5, and one of the best shots, not the best shots, as you'll see the next hole that we play next, how well he performs through that, but 195 yards into the par 3, straight into wind. Again, tidy little bit of short game practice here.
Best shot all day, mate. Best shot all day. Yeah, that'll do. That'll be all right. These are the ones that make the difference. This is the length we've been working on. Be good. Go on. Keep chasing. Oh, I'm so impressed. Mate, that's class. Well done. Mate, that's the shot all day long, isn't it?
Yeah.
Just get it chasing up towards the flag. You've done so well there.
Finally converted.
Good, I'm glad to hear it. Superstar. Well done, mate.
That hole just there basically summed up what we've been working on with Kieran. Safe shot down the middle,
Beautiful
get
drive,
up
mate.
around the green. It's a tough par 4, that about 380 yards off the back. Using your wedge, trying to get up around the hole and then give yourself a chance for par. Trying to give yourself that makeable putt. And again, through this top 9 around the lakes here, every shot was down the fairway. Every wedge shot at least made it look like it's got a chance. Giving yourself those putt opportunities, even though if you don't necessarily make it, we're talking averages here. Can we find more fairways? Can we find more greens in regulations? When we do miss the green, can we use our short game to try and get close to the flag to give ourselves a chance of a putt to make up that hole. And this is what Kieran did so well through the back nine, that technically there's no difference between this golfer that you're seeing and the golfer at the start. And if this is something that you guys might be struggling with, for example, you can play great golf by yourself but play with mates, it all blows up. It's the mental side of the game you want to work on. Bob Rotella, highly recommend. Game is not a golfer perfect. And pre-shot routine, especially for those pressured scenarios where all you can think about is the bad shots, where you're visualizing bad shots. You should be visualizing good shots. You should visualize it hitting the flag, going in the hole, chipping in, holding a long putt, because flooding your mind with the positive thoughts is always going to be a benefit factor for your golf game. Again, the guy couldn't miss towards the end, and there's no wonder that his handicap's come down to 12. I'll show you his recent scores that he sent me over, and he's even got lower than that since obviously making and editing this video. It was a pleasure to work with you, Kieran, and seriously well done with all the progress you made, mate.
Guys, if you like this video, you definitely like this video up here on the right hand side, and I'll catch you guys later.